Hello, folks. Dustin Zarni here, Democratic Elections Commissioner for Onondaga County. Welcome to Commissioner in a Car. Today is Tuesday, August 20th. And today a breaking news thing happened today that I'm going to kind of turn the Commissioner in a Car on. It's revolving around early vote by mail. And we'll talk about that and the Democratic National Committee that it's having their convention ongoing right now, these 4 days. Let's get right into it. Early vote by mail. And let's kind of get into the history on this a little bit. You may not know, or maybe you do know, that this new option of early vote by mail was put in place by the New York State Legislature to start in 2024. It was passed, I believe, in last year's session, and was signed in December by Governor Kathy Hochul, and went into effect this year, and has been in effect for all the elections this year, whether it's village elections or school elections or the April presidential primary or the June local primaries. And what it did was it created a new section of law in New York to allow citizens who wanted to vote by mail an opportunity to do so. Further history on this, you may remember that in 2021, there was a constitutional amendment put forward by Democrats to change absentee voting in New York. That is the traditional mail option voting that we've had, and make it a no excuse option. We've had excuse-based absentee voting, and it's in the Constitution, the New York State Constitution I'm talking about, as an option, and it's restricted to you must have a certain excuse to vote by absentee. And those excuses were that you were infirmed in some way, whether permanently or temporarily, that made it that you could not go to the polling place, that you were traveling outside of the county, or that you were sick. Well, I guess the infirm that day kind of goes towards that. And there's a few other little options in there that allow people to vote by absentee. Well, the New York Democrats in 2019, when they took over the legislature, passed a constitutional amendment, and it took 2 cycles, so it didn't get on the ballot until 2021. And the voters rejected this that constitutional amendment, and that ended really all thought of changing absentee voting. There was some temporary changes to absentee voting during the pandemic that basically did what the constitutional amendment was trying to do. However, after the constitutional amendment failed, there was some thought that we needed to attack this in a different way. And that thus stepped in early vote by mail. And this is actually a common practice in other states, and in fact many other states that had the same constitutional language that New York had regarding absentee ballots had adopted this early vote by mail procedure. And what it does is it creates another section of law, another opportunity that is different than absentee balloting, that allow voters to vote by mail. Now, the layperson will say, well, it's the same thing. Why are you passing the same thing if the voters already rejected it? Well, what the voters rejected was a permanent change to the absentee ballot coding in the Constitution. What they did not reject was an opportunity for voters to vote by mail if it was significantly different than absentees. And it is. It's a different section of law. Early vote by mail you have to apply for on a yearly basis. You can't apply for it permanently like you can for absentees. And so that is pretty significant differences, right? That permanent versus temporary coding of the language is what the legislature stated their reason for doing this. The reason for putting it in place. That early voting was already constitutional in New York. That had already gone through the appellate court's processes, and creating a separate section that allows you to vote by mail early is what would be constitutional. And like anything in New York, anything that expands voter access, we could expect a lawsuit on. And a lawsuit did happen. It was organized by our good friend, Elise Stefanik, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who's gone full MAGA and from the upstate area, and she's the leader of the Republican delegation in New York, and she and the New York State GOP sued on early vote by mail. And it's important to note that they've lost this lawsuit for the last time, because they lost it on the district level, they lost it on the appellate level, and now they lost it in the Court of Appeals. And by a 6-1 vote today, the New York State Court of Appeals ruled that early vote by mail is constitutional in New York, and that it can go forward. And that's it. It's over now. Early vote by mail is a permanent part of our electoral process. So if you want to vote by mail this election in 2024, you can apply for an early vote by mail ballot. You can go to our website, onvote.net. That's for Onondaga County, but it links to the statewide application. So anywhere in New York State, if you're watching or hearing this podcast outside of Onondaga County, then you can go to onvote.net and click on the request an absentee vote by mail ballot and link, and it'll give you an option. Now, if you want to permanently vote by absentee and you are either permanently out of the county or permanently infirmed or fall into other categories, you can select the absentee application. But if you just want to vote in this election by mail and you're not sure if what you want to do in future elections, you do the early vote by mail application. That still has to be done 15 days before the election. The application has to be filled out, and to guarantee that a ballot will be mailed to you. But don't wait, do it now. Ballots will start to be mailed on September 20th, and whoever has their applications in now will be part of that first mailing. And then we will do at Onondaga County and most boards of elections daily mailings up until election day after that. So that's the early vote by mail, and it's done now that it's gotten through the courts. It really would behoove the New York State GOP and all the campaigns to start embracing these alternative forms of voting. Early voting, now early vote by mail, absentee balloting. These are things that voters like. They like the convenience. They like the ability to choose whether they want to go to vote on election day. They like the assurity that their vote is done. Many people want to get this vote over with. They already know who they're voting for, and they want to be done with it. And by the way, most modern campaigns now are getting the list of people who have already voted by mail or early, and not calling them anymore. So, if you want to stop your political calls, there you go. Turn in your absentee ballot or turn in your vote by mail ballot. Go to early vote. You can get off the list. Most of the campaigns will stop calling you if you do that. Because they get lists. It's public whether you voted or not. That's part of election law. And it's a way to assure transparency in our elections as well, to know who voted. So, So this is done. We are still waiting on a decision on the pre-canvassing election bill that deals with early vote by mail and absentee ballots. This is our practice since 2022, where we've been opening and canvassing absentee ballots before election day and scanning them in. and reporting those results on election night, along with our in-person early and election day results. That law has been upheld at the district level, and we're waiting rulings at the appellate level and the appeals level, and it mostly upheld at the district level. There's a small part of what the judge, I believe it's in Rensselaer, said that there's a procedure put in place where courts can review ballots that the commissioners don't agree on. Right now, if commissioners don't agree, but one agrees it's valid, the ballot is still accepted. But however, that is what the law is right now until there's another ruling, because that ruling has been stayed as New York State appealed that original ruling. So we're waiting to hear on that. So that's the other election law case that we're following. Of course, we're waiting for appeals on the RFK Jr. Ballot issue that I covered in last week's Commissioner in a Car, as well as another ruling on independent nominees. The Green Party and other parties have ruled that the New York State's signature requirements on their independent ballot lines is too large, and although a version of that lawsuit has already been thrown out in previous elections, so I think I don't think that lawsuit, or even RFK's lawsuit, actually has a lot of shot here of changing that. But those are other court rulings that we're waiting for. But as we're waiting, we are now getting into the meat of the election season, and by that I mean that we have the Democratic National Convention is happening over the last couple of days, and it'll end on Thursday. And just a reminder that the conventions are the ballot access method for presidential candidates. When they had their primaries back in April in New York, but all spring and going into the summer throughout the country, as they had their primaries, what was being elected were the delegates. And the delegates that you see on the floor in the state seating on the floor of the Democratic National Convention, they are the ones that were elected by the voters during the primary system. And they're the ones who actually make the choice for a president. Now, in many states, and by rules in the DNC, the first round of balloting, the what they call pledged delegates, because they were elected with a pledge to support a certain candidate, have to vote for that candidate. However, unless that candidate decides to release their delegates. And Joe Biden, back in June, or not June, I'm sorry, was it June? It might have been June. No, it was July. No, it was August. I can't remember. It was just a month ago. Yeah, you know what? It was about a month ago. Late July, decided to not run for re-election. And he released his delegates in that thing, and he urged them to support current Vice President Kamala Harris. And they did. And there was a flurry of people that over the next couple of days that started to endorse Kamala, and it became very clear that she was the only choice the party was going to accept, that these delegates were going to accept, that even the elected officials were going to accept. So that's what's happening this the next 4 days, except for there was a virtual convention that happened in early August, and that virtual convention was done around August 5th or 6th to get done and make Vice President Kamala Harris our official nominee, because many states had deadlines that around August 7th and later that were that a nominee had to be put in place before those deadlines to put that candidate on the ballot. I think it was Mississippi and Ohio and a few other states that had, California, Nevada. And while those deadlines have been passed in the past and traditionally waived, there were a lot of discussions about whether they were going to actually continue with that this year. So the DNC, back in May, before President Biden ever decided that he wasn't running, in fact, he said he was, had made these plans to have this virtual convention. And so Kamala Harris became the nominee during the virtual convention, and then she nominated and selected Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her nominee, and the chair of the party, by rules of the party, was able to put his nomination forward because it was the selection of the presidential nominee. So in many ways, the votes and stuff like that you hear this week they're non-consequential. This vote has already happened. The vote on the platform is still there, and that's important. But the actual ballot access method has already happened. And we saw President Biden give a speech late last night. It's pretty much his farewell speech, I think, in many ways. And the crowd was incredibly thankful for him for allowing Democrats to move forward. That it's, and I think tonight is, Michelle Obama's going to speak. Hillary Clinton spoke last night. It's a star-studded event. And I think on Wednesday is former presidents Obama and Clinton, and as well as vice presidential nominee Tim Walz. And then on Thursday will be Kamala Harris. So accepting her nomination. So I just wanted to touch on that. That's what the conventions are, reminding you about. These conventions aren't just for show. They actually have some ballot access purpose to them, but that's already actually been accomplished for the Democrats because of that virtual convention. So here we are. That's it for this week's Commissioner in Car. Later this week, I plan on doing my first Czarny seminar of the year. I'm planning on doing one a month. I got 3 lined up over the next 3 months. And this one is about voter registration. So how to register to vote in New York. That will be released on Friday. And then on this weekend, my weekly wonk will be the town of Clay. We're getting into the political subdivisions, having elections this fall. So the town of Clay will be this week's weekly wonk. I did one last weekend on the city of Syracuse, so check that out. You can always go to DustinZarny.com and you can subscribe and get an email notification anytime I do any content or election news updates. So check it out, and good luck this fall, and have a good week. Bye-bye.